leaders are readers. If you're not reading and you want to be a leader, it's time to change that.
Do audiobooks count?
No.
When we start a business, we're most willing to trade our time for money. And like, as you move through these stages, you're less and less willing to trade your time for money, and you're starting to trade your money for your time back. Right?
Dude, I've talked to $5 million companies where they use the same bank account to pay their mortgage as they do to buy supplies. No.
Welcome back to another episode of you guessed it, the Mission Control Podcast with your boy, Mike Stearns, Ascend Digital Agency. And we got Nathan in the house yet again, part 2. We promised part 2, and we're going to give the folks what they came for. It's going to be a banger. What's up, Nathan?
How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm chilling. I'm super excited for this conversation. I've been looking forward to it since we wrapped up the last one.
Okay. Me too.
How are you?
I'm good. Just enjoying the spring weather here in Colorado, which if you don't like it, literally, wait a minute. I mean, it changes here like crazy. So we had some cloudiness, then we had rain, then it snowed. Mm-hmm. And now we just have some cloudiness. And then I think it'll be close to 70 degrees by tomorrow. Yeah, it's great.
They say variety is the spice of life, and you're getting to live that. So how blessed are you? Here. Yeah. I'm familiar with Mother Nature's seemingly bipolar ways here in Buffalo, New York. So
man, yeah. Well, and that's what all the people that are listening to this, that's what makes our world go around, right? Is that weather?
Yeah, the weather and diversity of thought. And it's okay if we don't agree on everything. Like, let's just be respectful of one another's opinions and talk through it. Maybe you'll learn something. So how about politics? I'm just kidding. Ooh. So, we talked about attracting new people into the audience funnel. That would be a good way to do it. I have a political science degree, so I am qualified to speak on these things, but we're not going to. So what we're going to cover, you had mentioned in the previous show, and we dove into, I think, the first phase a little bit, and then very top level the others. But there's really, as you see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, 6 different stages that you see roofing companies in or go through.
Sure.
Through inception of the company to large/exit status, right?
Yeah.
So I want to revisit that and kind of dive deep into each one of those problems associated, things that people can be aware of. If they're listening to this and they're like, I'm a fucking stage 2, what can we do to make your life easier just by being situationally aware, right? So why don't we start off at the top with phase 1?
All right. Now, if I know the last time we spoke was a little bit ago, so if I'm repeating myself, you're not rude to say, hey, we covered that. Just let me know.
Yep.
I literally was talking with a client yesterday, and I started diving into some concepts and stuff. And then I was like, had to stop and be like, did we talk about this already? Because I'm literally at the same phase with somebody else, and I can't remember. So, So we've kind of identified, Contractor Coach PRO, myself, Jim, kind of identified what we think are basically the 6 stages that businesses will generally be in. And so I'll just run through them. So the very first stage is essentially startup mode. You've decided you're gonna start a business. You're very close to, or have just let go of your day job somewhere else. And there's a whole pile of things, like you probably don't even have any revenue or barely anything really. You're just getting going. Then you've got stage 2, which is basically a solopreneur. You've done all the beginning stuff, and you're kind of in the process of generating revenue and building jobs. And you're doing most of it probably by yourself, or maybe you have somebody helping you out, an assistant, or maybe, your spouse is, chipping in the business somehow. Stage 2, I call it friends and family. So at some point, the solopreneur, if they've done well, they've generated too much work for themselves on their own, and they need some help. And where are you going to look for help? The people that are within arm's length of you, and that's almost always going to be your friends and family, your spouse, your kids, your mom or your dad, your best friend, cousins, just whoever you've got that's just right there to say, hey, I'm doing this business. I've got more work than I know what to do with right now, and I need some help, right? Friends and family stage. And then you get into stage, what would that be, 3, or was that stage 4? What did I say? Startup, solopreneur, friends and family. So stage 4 is what I tend to call building the team. And that's where we've kind of exhausted the friends and family. And we might even be outgrowing some of the skills that our friends and family have. And now we're looking to build a team and try to get to the next level. But that's going to require reaching out to people outside of your sphere, not friends and family. And then also oftentimes looking for people with experience who you don't have to train as much to do certain things. Oftentimes this is where people are trying to build a sales team. Who knows what, but you're now reaching outside of your friends and family stage. And oftentimes you're looking for experience, when you're in this team build stage. Then in stage 5, we're talking probably like, you could call it, I don't like the word scaling. It just got it's just become one of those catchwords, but it is a good word for exactly what it means. So I'll just use it as that. So you're kind of at a scaling stage. In other words, you can't simply hire one-to-one people for tasks that you need done. You need to be more systematic. You need to be smoother. And you're now looking to try and get more specialized in the people that you hire. And scaling is not about hiring more people who can do more things. Scaling is actually where your volume that you're producing requires you to hire one person to only do a couple of things versus all the things. Is that making sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you're trying to get more specialized in who you hire because your volume requires that one particular part of your process might have used to only take 1 or 2 hours a week. And so somebody could do that part along with a bunch of other parts. Well, now your volume is so big, it takes 5 or 8 hours a week to do that one particular thing. And so now you're kind of trying to get more systematized, be more efficient, specialize your operations, and then try to pump more volume into it, but with a much more efficient way of handling it, right? Stage 5. So stage 6 is a rare stage. As a matter of fact, stage 5 and stage 6 are kind of rare as far as businesses go. But stage 6 we're talking like proliferation or exit strategy. So proliferation, it's a good one. It'll win you some points in Scrabble if you use that word. But proliferation is now we're kind of like, we're going to try and blow up. We're aiming for 25, 30, 50, maybe it's 75 million. Okay. We're looking to really get up there. Right. And so there's the process of getting to that point. And then there's also the concept of, well, what do we do when we're there? You're going to have a whole different set of problems when you're at that size. Like you talk to somebody at 75 million at any given point, they probably have 2 or 3 different lawsuits going on at any given time. Like somebody right now at like 2 million's going, God, I couldn't handle a lawsuit. That'd be ridiculous. Well, these people have more than one happening right now. Right. So those folks are dealing with, how do they move inside their market? Do they expand? And then if you've got original owners and or partners, by the time they get to this stage, if they're smart, they're thinking, well, how do I get out of this? Like, I've got this thing. What do I do with it? Like, do I sell it? Do my kids want to take it over? Do I just cash it out and walk? Like, so those are the 6 stages that at least I've identified in kind of our home service industry.
That's good stuff. Yeah. And as you sit there and have that conversation, I start thinking of people that I worked with and I start categorizing where are they? They're a stage 3. That's a stage 4 for sure. It's a lot of fun. So let's bring it back to the top. Stage 1, like let's say somebody's just starting their business. They filed for their LLC. They got their business bank account. Mm-hmm. They're ready, right? They've got all the piss and vinegar in them, ready to take over the world. What are some of the crucial steps that they need to take in order to make that transition from, assuming they want to go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4? What are some steps that they can take to get out of stage 1 as quickly and as neatly as possible, we'll say?
So a couple of the things that they need to kind of have a checklist of like, what do I need to do to make sure I'm legitimately a business, right? Like you said, they've got an LLC. You have a business bank account. You're not using your personal one, and you don't commingle that money. That's a huge, I've talked to $5 million companies where they use the same bank account to pay their mortgage as they do to buy supplies. No. You need to make sure that you're not doing things in that way. You also got to be very, very wary of your money. Okay. Because money's the number one improperly managing your money is the number one reason why businesses fail. I'm convinced of it. Number two is leadership. But number one is that, how they say 90% of businesses go out of business in 2 years or whatever that stat is.
It's a large number.
It's a huge number. And it's generally because they don't know how to handle their money. When they sell a job, what do? Right? So you need to understand your money. And I'm telling you right now, just go use YouTube. Hell, you could get on Chat GPT and literally say, I am a home service startup. What are some rules of thumb to make sure that my cash flow is proper and I'm not improperly spending my funds? And Chat GPT will literally go, here you go. And it'll probably be 80 to 90% right. Good rule of thumb. The first check is never yours. And the second check only is after the bills are paid.
Yeah.
Okay. If you can keep those two rules, you'll generally be okay. And then you need to go just generate revenue, period. Don't be careful about thinking. Now, I'm going to make a classification after this, but just go make money. Like, you just need to go sell some jobs, build some jobs, and then you're going to discover that as a business owner, you're going to have to become a jack of all trades. You're going to have to know a little bit about advertising, a little bit about sales, a little bit about accounting, a little bit about legal. Like, you're going to start learning all of this stuff. Sometimes by smartly reading books and talking to people and researching it, and sometimes by just making a mistake that you hope doesn't sink you. And you go, well, not making that mistake
Baptism by fire.
Baptism by fire, right? We all pay the dumb tax. Mm-hmm. We all pay the dumb tax. It's just how you're going to pay it, okay? So, and these are generalities. I just want to put it out there. You have a few rare circumstances where somebody opens a business and they're already well-funded, and then they just take that funding and instantly invest into a business in order to create rocket levels of growth in a very short period of time. But they have $1 million. Like, they got $1 million.
Yeah, they're starting on third base. It's like, growing up with a trust fund.
That's exactly right. They're starting on third base. So those folks are rare. So if you're listening to this going, well, we're $30 million and that's not how we grew. Well, okay, fine. I'm not talking to you then.
But make sure you tell them about it and give them shit in the comments, folks. We love the engagement.
There's always going to be somebody out there. Nathan doesn't know what he's talking about. That's fair. It's fine. So those are things. Then you got to generate revenue. That's really, really key for a few reasons. Number one, you have to know what your limits are as the business owner. A lot of people want to start hiring folks immediately. Well, as soon as you hire somebody, your overhead goes up. Your overhead goes up and your time goes down because they need you to help them learn how to do their job.
Yep.
So first thing you want to do is figure out what's your capacity. How much can you sell and produce on your own? Because you will never be more profitable than you are right now.
Right.
Ever. Okay. And so that, like, phase one spills over into phase two, hope kind of naturally. Like, that startup phase, you got to get all those ducks in a row. Make sure that you're talking to the right insurance people. Be careful just calling your auto insurance, agent and asking them for a general liability policy on construction. Generally, they have no idea what those should be. They'll still write you one and sell you one.
Happily.
Yeah, they're like, here you go, right? You need to talk to somebody who understands what kind of liability insurance you need, asks the right kinds of questions. Do you plan on doing commercial work? Are you going to do work on houses that are or buildings that are more than 2 stories tall? Because as a startup, you might not even know that there's exclusions for 2-story buildings.
Right.
And now you're pumped and excited because you just sold your first multifamily and it's 3 stories tall, and you go get after it and you're not covered for that $250,000 job. So get your ducks in a row, okay? Spills over into solopreneur. You've been selling jobs, you've been building your jobs, you've been taking in your money. Maybe you have an answering service that handles your phones, or you've got an assistant that can help you with some paperwork and administration. But you're still just trying to max yourself out and see how much you can do on your own. Number one, it puts as much money in your pocket as absolutely possible when you do it this way. So if you need money to fund and invest in getting to the next stage, that's how you do it. Unless you have the $1 million in the bank, you do it by keeping your overhead down to zero. And if you're a solopreneur, your net profit's probably like 35%. Like, you're not spending money on anything. It's just you. So just start banking that cash, right? And then you've created the funds you need to be able to hire people without having to now sell more to hire people. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's just chasing the wind. You hire somebody and now you got to go pay for that person. Well, pay for them first.
Right.
So, solopreneur guys, max yourself out. Okay. And I don't mean burn yourself out. I mean, max yourself out. Now, this is where you see some variations in the type of industry that you're in. If you're in the roofing industry, average residential re-roof in the United States, and I know that's a lot, it's like 12,500, 1,500, 15,000 maybe average. Okay. So what that means is that you do 100 jobs in a year, you're over $1 million. That's not that many. It might feel like it, especially if you're doing it on your own. Okay. But if you're in an industry where your average ticket is $5,000, now you got to do 200 jobs in a year in order to hit that $1 million mark. Well, over $1 million mark. Okay. So that's why I'm saying these are generalities, right? I talked to a lady in California and I said, how many clients do you work with on average every year? And she said, probably somewhere around 1,100. And I went, wow. And I said, what kind of revenue did you do last year? She said, oh, just right around 900,000. That's a lot of transactions.
Yeah, that roofers, you guys got it easy.
Dude, roofing and siding are two of like the biggest ticket, other than having to fix a foundation. They're like the two biggest ticket items on a home, period. Yeah. So,
or anyway, a custom kitchen.
Yeah, well, then you've got the internal remodeling type stuff where that's a little different.
Gets crazy.
It's also hard to systematize those businesses,
right.
Unless you've ever seen like Bath Fitter or something. It's a total different thing. But so your job is to maximize what you can accomplish, okay? And then when you go to hire, you need to be looking for the thing that gets you the biggest bang for your buck right out the gate. Okay? Biggest bang for your buck right out the gate. And I can tell you right now, it's not a sales team.
What is it?
Not a sales team.
You told us what it is, and tell us what it is, Nathan.
So generally speaking, if you're a solopreneur and you need some help, your best move is either an admin or a production assistant.
But why, Nathan? Because if I hire a salesperson, they'll sell more money and that'll bring in more revenue.
So let's talk about the downside of trying to hire a salesperson right off the bat. Now, this isn't an always hard and fast rule. Every now and then you meet somebody, they jump into your business with you, they kind of know what they're doing and they do a good job right from the start. That's awesome. Okay. Generally speaking, you hire somebody who doesn't actually really know exactly what they're doing, regardless of what they said during their interviews, and they require training. They require training, which requires your time that now you have to spend with them versus selling, which is what you were doing before. Then they have an arc from training to success, and that arc is costing you money, generally speaking, or it's costing them money, and most people can't go without a paycheck for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, or a month and a half, especially if you're in the insurance industry, and paperwork to commission check could be 90 days.
Right.
Then if you do actually get this, if you have invested all this time and all this money and all this effort into a salesperson and they are actually successful and they actually can get out there and start selling, now the weight of production has just increased on you, and they will also then take the biggest piece of the pie when they do make sales. So your gross margins just went down, or net margins, depend on where you put them on the line in your accounting and budgeting. So they are the longest training period, least probability of success, and then if they are, they take the most amount of the money. Okay? So that's why I will tend to say your best bet is typically to hire an admin or a production person. Okay? Generally, they take the least amount of time to train, especially admins. Admins, they're very good listeners, and they're usually very good at details. They're very good at processes, and they will do what you ask them to and tell them to, and not just think they've got it, which is typical salesperson. Okay?
Yeah.
I love sales guys, so don't think I'm knocking on you, but I am. So admins, and then they will cost you the least. Admins, depending on where you're at, anywhere from $18 to $25 an hour. And if an admin can buy you an extra 5 to 10 hours a week worth of time, and you can sell one more job a week at an average of $12,000 a sale, that's 4 jobs a month.
So now we're at 43,000.
Yeah, $48,000 additional revenue in a month for somebody that might cost you what, $3,000? Maybe.
Yeah, let's say we give her 5. For you, 43,000. Figure out what your, depending on what your margin is. I mean, feels like a good investment.
So there's a good investment, right?
Yeah.
And with the like this whole concept of like virtual admins coming around. Oh my gosh. Virtual admins. You literally somebody who you only pay for the amount of time you need from them. Like if you only need 10 hours a week from an admin, they'll give you 10 hours a week and that's all you pay them for. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
So, so now all of a sudden you've seen what I tend to call micro scaling. So now you just gave yourself more time to generate more revenue and it didn't cost you hardly anything. Whereas a salesperson is going to cost you everything and it might not work at all.
Right.
Okay. Then the next move would probably be production help. Okay. Way easier to train somebody I don't mean a production manager. That's a different thing, but I mean somebody who can help you inventory jobs, run materials, check on your crews, do final inspections, return materials to suppliers, do things like that if you're a solopreneur, you spend probably 10 to 15 hours a week doing that stuff.
I got a question.
Please.
What's going to be the difference between that person and a project manager as far as responsibilities?
Same thing. You could call them a project manager, superintendent, production assistant. Whatever label you want to
call them the other thing. You can get away with paying them less.
Well, you start saying project manager or production manager, certain titles come with, like if you said, I'm going to make you the VP of my operations and you do like 3 jobs a week. Somebody's going to be like, VP of operations, it says on Google, makes an average of $250,000 a year.
Right.
Don't call them a VP of anything. Okay. Like production assistant, project manager. You could use project managers. Nothing wrong with that. Field supervisor, superintendent, things like that. Production managers are a little bit different only because there is a significant amount of industry knowledge required to be a production manager. In other words, you can train somebody to be a production assistant or whatever you want to call them by explaining to them some real basic things and then telling them what their duties are. Production managers need to understand quantities and conversions and suppliers and their supplier sales guys, crew training, hiring, like it's a whole nother animal.
Yeah.
So once again, we're talking stage 2 here. You're a solopreneur and you're trying to get to that next stage. Take the easy road. The easy road is keep yourself selling. Even if you don't think you're that great of a salesperson, I can tell you right now, because you own the company, you will outsell pretty much anybody and everybody that you hired to work there.
Yeah. It's your competitive advantage at that point.
It's your value prop.
I had Corey Combs with South Shore Roofing and Exteriors on. We were talking about how that changes, right? He's like, when I was running the jobs, selling the jobs, doing everything, like that's exactly like you want to be just a number with this company. I know they've been here for 20 years and have 1,700 reviews. Also, with that type of volume might cause issues. And who are you going to call? Who are you going to talk to? I bet you ain't talking to the owner, right? Fast forward, he's doing 15, 20 million. And it's like, you really want to trust the guy that's living in his mom's basement and does this as a hobby, right?
It's true. It's true. You got to bank on what you got. And, but yeah, it is true. Yeah. So you have this value proposition that if I'm selling a product to a homeowner and I'm going up against some other company's salespeople, I can say something that sales guy can't. And that is, I own the company. Right. The other thing that goes into you being a better salesperson as the owner is that nobody believes more in you and your company than you do. Right. And so that comes across like people feel that. They know this guy's passionate about what he talks about. He's passionate about what he's doing. He knows it. Why? Because it's his. He's selling himself and his business. Nobody will do that better than you as a business owner. So even if you think, I'm not a great sales guy, the amount of effort it takes to replace what you can produce in revenue by yourself is astronomical. And you probably don't have the time to do it.
Right.
So that's that. So those are things we need to be paying attention to as a solopreneur. take the easy road. The biggest bang for your buck when it comes to hiring is usually going to be an admin and some production help of some kind. Maybe you could, depending on your structure and style, maybe you hire a door knocker who you're willing to give a commission to for setting appointments. Pretty easy training structure there, and cost is generally not real high as long as they're producing the standard that you create. And so that's where, and then some of the things you need to be looking at too, and that is like, as you're getting ready to hire someone, this is when building your processes starts to become important. Because when it's just you've got it all in your head. So you're just doing what you know you're supposed to do. When I hire an admin or when I hire a production person, I now have to start giving them some of the stuff that's in my head. And if I leave it in my head, then your phone is going to go off every 20 minutes because they need an answer and it's not written down anywhere.
Listen, I'm tired of you giving proactively very good information and taking away my ability to sound smart by asking good questions. Okay,
sorry.
No, I couldn't agree more though. And I think it's, I struggled with that in the early stages of my business is you just want to do it. You just want to get the shit done, get the problem off your plate, put the fire out, move on. But then like you said, as if you hire the production assistant or the runner or the admin, you try to plug them in. There's no fucking outlet, right? There's nothing to understand what their expectation is. And now you're spending all your time. You've done each facet of what you're training them on 750 times, but because you didn't take a minute to write any of it down, you're doing it 751 times. Meanwhile, all the shit that continues to become problematic or friction or issues with jobs or selling new job opportunities, those are getting fallen by the wayside in lieu of you having to do this now.
Yeah, that's when I tell people, like, this is when your process is really, because if you want to bring somebody aboard, it's nice to give them something to plug into, and it's a roadmap. I would even tell people at this point, like, and software people don't hate me, but I'm telling you, probably don't even really need a CRM at this point either. Like, between QuickBooks and some Google Drives, you can keep track of a lot of this information between you or one or two other people. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't get one because they are helpful, but there's literally there's a learning curve when you get one that takes time, right?
So what would you say? This is like $1 million to $2.5 million ish?
Yeah, I would say depending on your ticket number, right? Because that matters.
Right.
In the roofing and siding, kind of world, your typical solopreneur can do anywhere between, at least in my experience, can do anywhere between 800 to $1.2 million by themselves.
Okay.
So it just depends on the size of the projects they're handling. And then it also depends on the person. Some people are just more organized than others. Yeah. Some people have a little more energy than others. Some people are a little more driven than others. And so who you are and then your ticket size will help you, will cause variations in how much you can produce by yourself.
Sure. It's funny because I was going to bring up the CRM thing, and I typically try to get people to adopt and implement a CRM as early as possible. Even, you don't need a $70,000 HubSpot build, when you're a solopreneur.
Right.
But what I can say from experience in dealing with people on the consulting side through marketing and advertising is the more people that you have to train and implement on the fly, it becomes disproportionately and exponentially more challenging because also you don't know it well enough. So you're learning with them instead of helping teach them, right? So I try to get people in as early as possible, and it could be, a minimal setup, but get people in the habit of going into the account, documenting the customer information, logging interactions, doing your invoicing through and integrating it, like just some of the most trivial, like minimal viable product type things that you could do with a CRM. I think the habit forming nature of doing that really helps teams grow when they want to add more people.
I think the way to think about it, and I think you're hitting, as soon as somebody else other than you has to touch a job file, that's pretty much when a CRM starts to become very, very helpful. As soon as somebody else has to interact with a customer or touch the job file or progress a project from one stage to the next, the CRM starts to become your repository for all that data and all that information.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if Betty at the office, who I hired as my first employee, and she's kind enough to be doing a really good job for the $20 an hour I'm giving her, she calls you and is like, Mr. Jones called and he's pissed. He said the crew was supposed to be there, but you didn't answer your phone. You're hearing this on a voicemail an hour and a half later because she has no idea. She said he spoke to you, right? And there's no history. There's no centralized source of information. She's got to wait until she gets back to you, which sucks for that customer because they're trying to figure their shit out.
Well, pay attention to those of you listening to what Michael's saying, because that means that you owners need to use your CRM.
I'll tell you, I'm like, well, we'll talk about, we do sales and advertising and marketing, right? So we talk a lot about sales because there's so much correlation between the two. And I'll say, well, what's the average follow-up on each one of your leads?
Average.
Yeah, I can't get these fucking guys to document this CRM.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah,
because it's like this lead sucked. This one was great. This one was great. We sold this one. Appointment set here. These 3 sucked. Never got a hold of any of these. It's like, well, how many times did they try? I don't know. These guys, you can't get them to do it. So I don't know if you've got advice for that, but I know that that's a pervasive issue.
So in trying to get your people to use the CRM, there's two methods you can use. You can micromanage them, which salespeople are going to hate, even though they probably could use a little of it. You can micromanage them and constantly try to stay on top of them always in trying to use that CRM. Or what I've discovered is the number one choke point for accountability is the approval stage. And it doesn't matter which CRM you're using. Every CRM that's at least in our space will have some sort of line in the sand between a job coming from the sales process and going into the production process. There's a line in the sand. So the CRM probably has it, whether you're using it or not. Sure. So that line in the sand is your number one tool to ensure that your people are using the CRM. There are certain requirements and stipulations and things that must be met for that job to cross that line. And guess what usually happens when the job crosses that line? A commission check gets cut too. Okay. Now it might be on the initial check. Who knows? Everybody has different ways of doing things, but oftentimes a commission check is associated with a job moving into production because we get a first check, sales guy can get some money, whatever it is. So now you've got this little check and balance. And so if you're trying to force your sales guys or enforce the standards that you want your salespeople to use the CRM and to put everything in it that needs to be there, that checkpoint is the one that you use. It's missing some photos. They didn't fill out our scope form. We didn't get the customer's initials next to the color or a product choice. They didn't, we're missing the contingency, or they didn't upload the insurance paperwork, or any number of things that are required for it to pass that barrier. Job is rejected.
Yeah.
That's right there. Sorry, job's rejected. You didn't get everything you needed in order to do this. And with that rejection means you're not getting paid whatever. Yeah, we got the first check. We got all the stuff you brought in, but the job's not ready to go to production. So you're not going to get paid.
Sorry, bro.
Right? Like, and I would say that the majority of the time when you start to do that, your salespeople will make fewer and fewer mistakes. They'll turn a job in and they'll be like, oh, this thing's perfect. I got this thing in here. It gets rejected for, I don't know, it's missing something. They hate it, right? But they'll probably never make that mistake again.
Right.
Probably. So yeah, it's a painful process, but you want to get your people to use it. And then if they just straight up reject using the CRM, to me sounds like they're refusing to do their job.
Just get rid of them.
I mean,
so what's that?
I was gonna say, I had one person told me this once. You guys will probably find this funny. They said, well, I got this one guy and he's an older gentleman and he's not good with technology. He's just not good with it. He doesn't like it, doesn't feel like he can do it, doesn't know how to use it, whatever. And I was like, well, tell me more about this guy. He goes, well, he's kind of a weird guy. He likes to pick up lawnmowers and fix them up and then flip them and sell them. And I'm like, where does he get all these lawnmowers? And he goes, well, he uses Facebook Marketplace.
Weird.
Then I went, so let me get this straight. He jumps onto a social media platform, searches through a particular section in this social media platform, messages people who have the thing that they need, then finds out where they live, and then buys the thing, and then he goes and lists it again on another social media platform.
Yeah. And
he goes, yeah, actually, he does do all of that. I'm like, I don't think it's a technology problem.
Yeah. It's interesting as we sit here and talk about the first couple stages and natural progression, very early on when we start a business, we're most willing to trade our time for money. And like, as you move through these stages, you're less and less willing to trade your time for money, and you're starting to trade your money for your time back. Right?
Yeah. I like that one because when you don't have any business, you have more time than money. So where are you spending your time?
Right.
You should be spending your time trying to get some more money. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that, right? But like you just said, as you increase your revenue and you increase your profitability, you have less time, but you're starting to have more money.
Yeah. And it almost feels more stressful than when you're trying to find, the high leverage activities to make the money, when you're starting to try to offload things, because we start a business, we want control over it. I say it all the time. It's my baby. No one will do it better than me. But then when you start taking those hats off and hire people under those people, it's like, you get fucking anxious about that and things getting done. And this whole thing's going to blow up and it's going to crumble. And my life's work is going to be brought to a pile of rubble. It usually doesn't happen though, right? That's the good news is, we probably think worst case scenario, and it's probably never equates to anything close to that, except for the 90% of people that it does in the first 3 years or whatever that stat is. So,
well, it's important because like a lot of things, we know what it took for us to make that. It's like, if we're investing our time and then we see the money begin to come in, we know what that took. Now, all of a sudden we've got some money, and now we want to invest it to get our time back. So and that normally requires investing in people and technology. Yeah. And so if I invest that, but I'm not really seeing my time come back to me, then I feel like I'm just lighting money on fire.
Yeah. It's a real mind fuck as you're going through it, right? Like you're feeling like the different stages of it. It's like, fuck. Yeah.
Well, so that the thing to keep in mind as a solopreneur as you're moving into this friends and family stage is building that process is really key to giving something to them so that they can use to guide them through what their job is. The other thing that's key is if you want to build accurate job descriptions, they come from your process. So in other words, I've got different roles inside my company and they handle different steps and stages inside of this process. Well, when you look at your process, you're like, well, if I go to hire somebody, these are the things I want them to do. Well, now you literally have a list of things to put inside of your job description.
Right.
And now that you've got a list of things to put inside the job description, you now have something to hold them accountable to. Because we just hire somebody, we don't feel like they're doing their job. And I ask somebody, well, what's their job description say? And they go, well, I don't really have one. And I'm like, well, then do they think they're doing their job? And if they don't, who says they're wrong? Nothing does. So the job description thing comes out of your processes. And so you can give somebody something to plug into, and you can give them a document that tells them what their job is. And then when we know what we're putting on their plate, it also helps us understand how much we should pay them.
Right.
I mean, come on, Facebook groups. What do y'all pay your sales guys? How many times have you seen that?
Yeah, it's usually a tire fire. People fucking going at it in the comments. You get some answers, but then a lot of people are like, oh, what are you, stupid?
You know what I generally don't see in any of those threads, and I try to stay away from them because you're right, it turns into a tire fire. But somebody asking, what do you require of your sales guys? Nobody asks that. They all go 10, 50, 50, salary plus bonus, nothing. I just let them go before I owe them anything. I wish somebody would be honest about that one. But you don't ever see somebody say, well, what do you expect of them?
Right.
Like, what do you want them to do? Because the scope of your expectation dictates the piece of the pie they get.
Right.
And so when you're building, so your processes are important as you begin to hire people, number one. And so then as you start to shift into this friends and family thing, that's where you're bringing in the people closest to you. And oftentimes I found this is oftentimes a really fun stage for people. Like because they're working with their best friend, they're working with their family, and they will generally see some growth, and it starts to get fun and starts to get really exciting. You know what I mean? And so in these cases, deepening your processes, deepening your job descriptions, nothing will ruin a friendship or a family relationship faster than getting in bed together with money. Right. So expectations are all so very, very key to making sure that you maintain those friendships and you maintain those relationships with the friends and family that you pulled in. And then you begin to put the right hats on the right people. Because one of the things I see is that once you hire friends and family, you hear that phrase like everybody's wearing a lot of hats, right? Well, odds are you've got two people wearing the same hat, and then one hat that's not being worn by anybody. So we need to actually get those things established and understood. Once you start to do that, I think this is when you probably are getting close to being able to build a sales team. We're talking stage 3 here.
Right.
Not stage 1, not stage 2, stage 3. You're probably getting to the point where you can think about starting to build a sales team. And that requires ensuring that you've used money to buy yourself time to do the things that you need to do, so that when you do build a sales team, once again, you have an outlet to plug these guys into, or gals, to help them become successful. And so that's like understanding the kind of person we're looking for, giving them an appropriate job description that tells them what their commission's for. It's not for just putting ink on paper. It never is. Right. Okay. Then having standards and KPIs to hold them accountable to. And then having something that you can track that stuff with. So you can tell them, hey, I want you to knock 100 doors a day. Cool. How do you know they did it? Right. Now, if they're turning in the number of sales that I'm asking for them, I don't care if they knock 1 door a day, quite frankly. But that's my management style.
Sell something. If not, then we use these KPIs to talk about why you didn't.
That's exactly right. Like if you can't sell anything, now we got to talk about your activity. Yeah. But if you're killing it, I don't care what you do.
Yeah. Oh, you work 30 minutes, you work 12 hours. Great. You got your sale. Congratulations.
Right. That's why I always wonder, like, why do salespeople give so much pushback in training and education? They don't want to use a presentation. They don't want to follow a script.
Because they're fucking stubborn and they think they know better. Love you sales guys, by the way. I'm a sales guy.
But I'm just saying, like, if you want to work 30 hours a week and kill it, you should have a closing percentage north of 60. Yeah. Then you have to run half the number of appointments that you do now in order to make a living.
Yeah.
Like, why would you want that?
The math. I've got no rebuttal.
That's a tangent. But now in this stage, we got to build some things in order to, when we hire what we hope is the right person, I've got training structures for them. I have an incentive package that drives them to do the things I'm wanting and that they need to do. I have presentation tools. I've got pricing tools. I have closing methodologies and training. I have, I've got, KPI tools that they input their data into so that I can see what they're doing and help them in the places they're weak. I have review tools so I can give them reviews on a regular basis. I know this is boring stuff, but he just yawned. If you're only listening to this, Michael just yawned while I was talking.
So, I'm waiting for my opportunity so I could sound smart. That's all I want to do by listening to you.
Sorry. But you have to have time to build those things rather than just putting out an ad and trying to hire sales guys.
I like what you said about the KPIs, and it's interesting because if you implement things that track productivity, like especially with salespeople, their immediate response is going to be like, "How fucking dare you? You think I'm not going to do my job? You think I'm not good enough? You think I'm not going to sell? Okay." And, but I would look at it like this, right? That's just, it is what it is. Like the productivity tracking software or this program is designed to do this. Now we can perceive it this way. We can perceive it this way. That's fine. And if I'm holding a can of bubbly, right? What is this? Well, it's a drink, right? And I don't have bubbly today because I'm upset that they still haven't responded to my invite to DM me to sponsor the show.
What's up, LaCroix? Come on.
Maybe I'll move on from my petty ways and drink bubbly on the show again. It's too soon to tell. But it's a drink, right? You drink it because it tastes good, because you're thirsty. Well, if I take that same bubbly and I whip it at you, well, now it becomes a weapon, right? It's not just a drink anymore.
Yeah.
But if I walked up to you, Nathan, after having this conversation, would you feel threatened? If I had a thing of bubbly? Probably not, right? Because you don't know me to be the type of person that's going to, turn something like that into a weapon. And if your people believe in you and your vision, they're less likely to assume that this is going to be the case. And it's easier to have the conversation, before you start implementing or after you start implementing, like, hey, like it could be this, but it's not this. This is what we're trying to do. We're all rowing in the same direction. And I learned that lesson the hard way.
So you literally, that's perfect. Like, just so you know, Michael, you are smart. One of the key components as you shift from friends and family into building a team, sales team, management team, leadership team, whatever it may be. And some people might argue with me on when this becomes really, really important, but your company has a culture right from the start. Whether it's on purpose or not, the culture is always generally a reflection of the owner. They're just operating how they operate. And like when you have friends and family, your friends and family tend to be people like you, right? Birds of a feather flock together. So in the friends and family stage, your culture isn't necessarily a real big deal. And you probably don't have a huge problem with it because you're all we're family, right?
We're happy things are going well. They care more than the average person.
So then what you just said was me knowing Michael and the kind of person he is. If he's walking up to me with a can of bubbly, is going to have an impact on whether or not I think he's going to try and hurt me with that thing, or he thinks I look thirsty and I'd love a drink of bubbly water. Okay, your culture is the way you communicate that. Mm-hmm. So now, as you move into this building a team stage, your all of these other things start to become more and more important that you may not have thought about before. Now, proactively building a vision and a core values and a purpose and a mission inside of your business. And I have different definitions for that than your typical corporate jargon. Now all of that stuff starts to become crazy important because we're not hiring friends and family anymore. And we need a way to communicate to them that I'm not trying to hurt them with a can of soda. And for them to know, and for us to know whether or not they're the type of people that we're going to fit into who we are as a business.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, when you're hitting stage 4, proactively building your culture starts to become really, really, really important.
I agree. And I'll also say, in conjunction with that, how you choose to preface it and roll it out will also impact, I think, how it's received, right? So I royally fucked this one up. It was not too long ago, right? I was just super busy, had a ton of shit going on with the company. We're hiring people, et cetera. We're growing. Everything's great. And then we're dealing with the growing pains of any growing company. And I had been kicking around the idea for some time. I'd mentioned it, once or twice. And then I kind of sent out an email to a handful of people because it was like a trial basis and you get X amount of seats. So I pick one person from each department, like, hey, this is kind of what this does. This is what we're trying to hope to accomplish, et cetera. It didn't go great. So we had to have a meeting about it, right? Because we were like, hold on, why are we doing this? This doesn't feel great. Like, all the things that you would naturally feel if somebody kind of blindsided you by this. And like this, I told him, I was like, I royally fucked this up, guys. Like, I botched this as a leader. I'm going to own that squarely on my shoulders. Here's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to associate for our different tasks that we're doing that roll up into a project, the task. How long does that take? And then when we start changing variables in our equation, what's impacting what to making the company more efficient, making it less frictionful, ultimately to give you guys a better experience in your job, maintain profitability, and deliver exceptional product and service to the clients, right? And everybody is on board with that, right? And I'm like, we're testing this software. We might use a different software. We might do something more of a manual process. I'm like, but what's important is that we have reliable data to consistently make database decisions as it relates to these things.
So you sent an email and asked everybody what they did in the last 3 days? Is that what?
No, it's like, I had prefaced it in a meeting the week before and it's like, hey guys, we're going to be implementing this, this is what it does, et cetera, et cetera. But we hadn't talked about it in a week and we talked about it once, right? In my mind, I had thought about it a ton. So it wasn't, it's one of those things like when I tell roofers about creating content, I'm like, you guys know everything about fucking roofing. You have to step outside of that. And remember, you're talking to people that have no fucking idea when you're making content for homeowners. You can't assume the knowledge that you have, they have, because they don't. Right. I had assumed wrongly, not really assumed, just wasn't situation aware enough to realize like, yes, you've thought about this for 30 hours in the last week and a half to try to make the impact for the company better for everybody involved. you didn't focus enough on how you were going to frame it, how you're going to roll it out. And because of that, it landed like shit. And that's
how would you have done it differently?
I think I probably would have used it on myself first and drawn out some real world examples as far as it tracking productivity from task to task, things that I recognize that'll be impactful, that will allow me to change my behavior to better the experience, to make it more streamlined, and get better results, right? Less distraction. Because it's, when you start talking about tracking people, there's a lot of concerns. Like, it seems invasive, but there's also a lot of benefits too, right? So if I'm an employee and I'm doing really well, like I'm grinding, I'm killing it, I want to have those quarterly reviews and talk about the fucking metrics that are derived from your tracking system. You said these are acceptable metrics. Like, I'm fucking crushing it. So while you tell me you're giving me 10%, I think I want 20.
And you have the ammo to ask for it.
Exactly. It's very objective. It's quantifiable, right? Which, if in any negotiation, if you have hard numbers to go off of, it's a lot more challenging to make numbers lie than humans.
So in taking that a step further, is it, number one, having a conversation with your leadership team about what you've been thinking about for the last 30 hours, number one. Mm-hmm. Then number two, is there a way to associate your doing this to your company culture? In other words, we have a culture here, and these are our core values, and this is our purpose, and this is what we're all about. And to me, it seems like doing this is a direct reflection of these two core values and of this part of our mission, or what have you.
For sure. And one of the things that I talked about after it, when it landed, I was like, we could have done better on this one, was, it's like, okay, so I used to work for a company and they had their KPIs, they had their tracking and things like that. I said, and the exception that I took was, so for a sales team, you make 25 calls a day, you have an average talk time of this, you need this many appointments a week, you need this many meetings held, and then you're going to hit this number, right? And mine were always way lower, right? Because I did way more research, qualified my prospects. I knew a lot about their business and them before I called them. I've read reviews. I look at their SEO rankings, like all these things. So I make 10 calls instead of 25, but it's the 5th of the month. You're beating me up for KPIs that you think are important, and I'm number one in sales in the company. I think that you should have metrics like that in the event that you can use them to coach and train and develop people, right? Like, if I'm hiring a new person, I want to give them predictability in what they can expect and what looks like a good job. For sales, it's easier because there's numbers, right? There's dollars. But if you're doing account management or you're doing something like that, it's less easy because there's not as many things that are quantifiable. It's like we're trying to gauge customer experience, and things like that. So, but you could still put some KPIs around it. So it's figuring out, what's the daily workflow? What are all the tasks associated? What are repeatable things that are happening every day, every week, every month? What are one-offs? And then how do we tie some things around that to really track how we can improve? Because I think my team's fucking phenomenal. They're amazing. I tell them that. And it's like, okay, what better time to build a baseline for expectations if we double in growth over the next 12 or 24 months than the team that we have now? Because I know you guys are really fucking good.
There's this underlying thing too that should be reinforced, and that is, I hired you. I want you here.
Right. Well, we talked about that.
Yeah, okay. We're not doing this because I'm trying to find a way to get rid of you. Like, if I wanted to get rid of you, I'd get rid of you. Like,
and I was like, show of hands, how many times has anyone here felt micromanaged by Mike?
Oh,
I was like, so, sometimes what we have to do, and I'm like, and again, I completely fucking botched the rollout on this, and I apologize, and this is my commitment to you that I will be better in the future. I said, but sometimes we got to take a step back from what we innately feel when something happens and then look at the evidence, right? So you've been here 2 years, you've been here 3 years, you've been here 6 months. If you can't point to an instance that comes to mind where I've micromanaged you, like, this isn't my opportunity to do it. I can make you do daily check-ins 3 times a day. Like, you need to meet with me at 4 o'clock before you leave every day. And we're going to go through these 17 things, and because, they're important.
Right.
Like, that's not who we are. For me, that's not effective leadership, and that's not the company we want to be. Like, I promise you, this is just to make the company better.
And And so what those of you that are listening to this conversation right now, what you're hearing is you're hearing Michael verbalize a set of business skills that you will not inherently develop by building your business. This is a really missed, I think, thing that doesn't get communicated. If you teach somebody how to build estimates, you will, number one, you've been building estimates yourself, you'll get good at doing estimates. And then you teach somebody else to do estimates, you'll get good at teaching somebody to do estimates. But none of that skill path and development prepares you or teaches you to be a leader. So in other words, like, you can get better at being a teacher by teaching. Yeah. Okay. Because you're going to be, that was an effective thing. That did not work really well to teach this person. I'm going to make these adjustments and get better at it. But what you're hearing from Michael is now Michael's not as concerned about teaching somebody how to build an estimate. He's more concerned about making sure that person is successful in the role that they're in. That is a whole different skill than teaching somebody how to run a sales appointment or how to take in a lead or how to manage our accounts receivables. And so as you see somebody progress into this stage of team building and then into our fifth stage of massive growth or scaling, your job as a leader, and then likely the job of the people below you, is now you're moving away from the need for you to teach and manage how people build estimates. And now that person is your job, not building the estimates.
Right.
And so one of the things that I will see, once again, friends and family, they've known you your whole life. Like if I went and work, if I had my buddy Mark come work with me or we worked together, we've known each other since we were 7.
Yeah.
Okay. I could annoy him for sure, but I probably couldn't offend him because he knows if I said something somebody else would find offensive, he'd be like, I know that Nathan doesn't mean an offense by that. But when you've hired somebody who doesn't know you, your ability to navigate helping that person become successful is significantly more complicated than the way that you talk to your brother when your brother's known you since you were a little kid.
For sure.
And so now all of a sudden the requirement to develop leadership skills yourself happens inside this team building phase, because now it's not you going out and making sales, and and it might be you training your salespeople, but now managing your sales manager and managing your production manager and leading your office manager. That now starts to become your job. That's a whole set of skills you will not naturally develop. You actually have to try to develop those ones. Right. And so that's going to require a different set of investment on your part that I don't think people think about. And that's why I'm here to tell you should be, if you're in phase 4 and you're moving into phase 5 and you're thinking about, or phase 3 and 4, and you're thinking about phase 5, you need to be thinking about your leadership and your ability to navigate human beings. And so now you've got this other set of skills that need to be developed. Because like I said before, number 1 reason why people go out of business is finances. Number 2 is leadership.
Mm. Yeah, if any of my team members are watching this, sorry I failed you guys.
Well, better. At least you have
I told them, I was like, listen, I tell people be better. Like if this happens, I'm like, just be better. I was like, I'm going to take my medicine for all you guys. I'll be better. All right.
You have a leader who's being very transparent in front of the, I don't know what, 5 people that watch this. I'm just kidding.
3 and a possible. No.
So a whole nother set of things to start being aware of as you begin to move toward proliferation. And so building your own personal leadership skill is really key in stages 3 and 4. Stages, in order for us to move from stage 4 into 5 and then into 6, your ability to do that will be directly proportionate to your ability to build leaders.
Yeah, so you got to figure out the leadership side for yourself, and then you got to be able to figure out teaching, right? So you're teaching before that, then you're building leadership qualities, and now you're doing both and trying to parlay them together.
Right.
So
now you've got to be able to build leaders, because now you're not the sales manager anymore.
Right.
And you're not the production manager anymore. And you might not even be the general manager anymore.
Right. So how do you figure that out? Is it mentorship?
Well, I think it's a multi-pronged attack. Number one, the number one key to growth is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. If you don't realize that if you don't realize that you talk to people in a super matter of fact, cold, point blank, black and white way, you're constantly going to be confounded and confused and frustrated when people tell you that you seem to talk like an asshole all the time.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that that's
weird. I think I'm great.
So you're just like, somebody's telling me I'm an asshole again. What is going on? Right? Like, so awareness is the very, very first step to self-improvement. So you really got to become self-aware on a lot of these different things. So I think creating space for yourself to spend time internally is important. The resources for leadership development are astronomical. YouTube videos, podcasts, books. I mean, just go read anything from.
But how many leadership gurus are there? And like, it's the same thing with marketing, and there's so much information flooded out there. Like, so do you have any folks in particular, any books in particular, any podcasts in particular that you found especially helpful with leadership development and then teaching how to develop new leaders?
Okay, so you guys might hate this. I don't know. There's the way that I learn. So I will point to more books. I'm a reader. Yep. And here's another one, guys. I know it's a pithy statement. Leaders are readers. If you're not reading and you want to be a leader, it's time to change that.
Do audiobooks count?
No.
That's probably why I botched that rollout.
That's right.
Fuck.
No, I would say I'll say this about audiobooks. If it is something that is designed to inspire and energize and get you pumped up, I think audiobooks work fine. Like that psychotic dude that the runner that was a Marine,
Goggins.
Yeah, Goggins, right? Like his book, everybody I talk to, even if they've listened to it, the audio, they're like, man, that book gets me jacked. I'm like, okay, cool. Great audiobook. The problem that I see with audiobooks is that if you're trying to get into a book that you need to study, so in other words, a book is giving you either practical steps or it's giving you a structure for self-reflection, you can't do that while you're driving.
Yeah, like, I listened to EOS or Attraction by Gene Wickham or whatever, right? On audiobook. There was no way I'd be able to implement. Now I could go through, I bookmarked things. I revisited some of them, not as many as I should have because my company was super small at the time. We didn't have the type of workforce that would necessitate that type of system, but there's no way that I'd be able to listen to that and pull enough of the key concepts to even put together an organization that remarkably even resembles their system. Right. But if I sat there,
there's a couple of factors. So reading generally increases your retention. Way too many people think they're auditory learners than are. Auditory learners are like the rarest learning form of all. I think there's 4 of them. And out of 100 people, the fewest number would be auditory learners. So there's that. There's also, like you said, so if I'm driving down the road and I'm listening to a book and I'm like, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden my mind starts thinking about a concept I just heard. And I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder if I do that. I do that. Meanwhile, that audiobook is still playing. And whatever happened after that, you didn't hear.
It's a good point.
Whereas if you're reading it and you can stop and go, whoa, hold on a second. And then maybe I make some notes. Maybe I highlight something. And as I'm doing that, I am literally just solidifying my retention of that concept while I'm reading. So I think audiobooks have their place, but actually physically reading the books. So I'll get back to like Max Lucado, John Maxwell. 2 easy slam dunks. Those 2 people write books that are just fantastic. 21-year refutable laws of leadership. Max Lucado, I think it was, wrote a book called Integrity, and it's not about necessarily like integrity as in honesty. It's about whole, complete solidity. Phenomenal book. Integrity, 21-year refutable laws. John Maxwell wrote a book that changed my life forever in the way that I have conversations. It's called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. Okay. That book will change your life. Then if you're dealing with a leadership team and you want to give them something that's a real kick in the feels, there's a book called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. I recommend that to every single leadership team I ever work with. I'm like, buy that book for your people and everybody must read it. So reading books, super critical. I've been to a John Maxwell event. Fantastic. I know there are leadership gurus out there. But good ones, they all have their strengths. All of them do. So don't be afraid. Well, be afraid to overspend, but don't be afraid to spend somewhat and go see some of these things. Okay. Right. Then you absolutely must have a personal mentor. Period. You must have somebody who can see through your bullshit, and can help you walk through it. So as you're reading these books, as you're doing self-reflection, as you're growing and you're trying, you've got to have a confidant, a mentor, somebody who you can tell them, like, I read this thing and I'm struggling with it and I'm not sure if I do it right, or maybe, and I should be worried about it, or maybe I'm not doing it at all, or how do I do it better? You've got to have somebody like that in your life, that can really help you navigate those things. I've had numerous ones in my life. My current one right now is Reggie Brock. So if you haven't listened to or
shout out to Reggie, that's my guy.
You've got it. Reggie is my dude, and there's something fantastically special about that man. And Jim Johnson's been a mentor of mine. I've got a number of other ones in my past, in my history, including my dad. And so you have to have that person. And then there's probably community as well. You need a community of people who don't work for you, that don't work for you, that you can have peer relationship with and conversations where you also have a chance to pour into somebody else, and they don't have to listen to you because you pay them. They decide to listen to you because you have a relationship with them. Yeah,
really important. It's like, man, every restaurant I go to, everyone's so nice to me. I must be such a great person. It's like,
the bartender's always caring about my drinks. They're just like, hey, do you need another drink? I'm like,
you see how much she was smiling when she was talking to me? Dude, this was amazing. And I sense a part 3 coming up soon. Cause I do want to dive a little bit more into 5 and 6, but we are out of time. So I want to thank you for your time. Would you accept another invitation to come back and run it back one more time?
I'm starting to think we should just make this a weekly thing. I love talking to you. And next time, maybe I'll let you talk more. I'm sorry.
Listen, I'm fine with not talking. I talk enough. It's okay. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks to Nathan, obviously. Thanks to the team at Roofer. If you guys need instant roof quotes, roof measurements, clean and pristine proposals, which will give your prospects no choice but to buy from you, click the link down in the description. So we gone.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.